Let's jump right into it. Number 5. The mechanical computer that could predict eclipses with pinpoint accuracy, built over 800 years before anyone even dreamed of digital technology. Picture this. You're standing in a medieval monastery, watching monks turn bronze gears and wheels on a device that looks like it belongs in a steampunk movie. This wasn't some simple astrolabe or sundial we're talking about. This was a full-blown analog computer, capable of tracking the movements of the sun, moon, and planets with mathematical precision that wouldn't be matched again until the telescope was invented. The thing could tell you exactly when the next solar eclipse would happen, down to the minute, decades in advance. It calculated lunar phases, predicted planetary positions, and even accounted for the weird wobble in Earth's orbit that we didn't officially discover until the Renaissance. But here's the kicker: most people today couldn't build this thing even with modern tools and materials. The gear ratios were so complex and precisely calculated that they represented mathematical concepts that wouldn't be formally written down for another 300 years. Imagine trying to explain to someone in the year 1200 that their monks were casually using differential calculus in bronze form number 4. The world's first automated factories, powered entirely by water and operating 24 hours a day, making medieval Europe more industrialized than most people realize. Forget everything you thought you knew about the Industrial Revolution starting in the 1700s. By the 1100s, entire valleys across Europe were filled with the constant hammering and grinding of water-powered machinery that never stopped. We're talking about trip hammers that could forge iron with the force of 10 blacksmiths, powered silk, spinning machines that produced thread faster than dozens of human workers, and grain mills so efficient they could process enough flour to feed entire cities. The sound alone would blow your mind. Imagine walking through a medieval landscape and hearing the constant mechanical rhythm of gears, wheels, and hammers echoing through the valleys like some kind of ancient industrial symphony. These weren't just simple water wheels turning millstones. Some of these facilities had camshafts, gear trains, and automated sequences that would automatically switch between different operations. One facility could take raw iron ore and, through a series of water-powered processes, turn it into finished tools without human hands touching the metal, except to guide it from station to station. The level of mechanical engineering required to build these systems was so advanced that, when the Industrial Revolution finally happened centuries later, engineers had to rediscover principles that medieval millwrights had been using for generations. Number 3. The surgical procedures so precise and advanced that they included cataract surgery, brain surgery, and anesthetics that actually worked, performed with instruments sharper than modern scalpels. This is where everything you learned about medieval medicine being primitive and barbaric falls apart completely. While Hollywood shows us grimy barber, surgeons hacking away with rusty knives, the reality was that medieval Islamic surgeons were performing operations that wouldn't look out of place in a modern hospital. They were removing cataracts by making tiny incisions in the eye and carefully extracting the clouded lens, restoring sight to people who had been blind for years. They were drilling holes in skulls to relieve pressure from brain injuries, using techniques so refined that patients regularly survived and recovered completely. But the real game changer was their anesthetics. These weren't just people biting on leather straps. They had developed chemical compounds that could render patients completely unconscious for hours while maintaining stable breathing and heart rate. The main ingredient was a mixture that included opium, mandrake, and henbane, combined in precise ratios that had been perfected through generations of careful experimentation. The surgical instruments themselves were works of art, steel blades forged to edges so fine they could slice through skin without the patient even feeling it, specialized forceps for internal procedures, and even early versions of surgical saws for bone work. Some of these techniques were so advanced that they were actually lost during later periods and had to be redeveloped centuries later. We literally went backwards in medical knowledge for a while. Number 2. The global communication network that could send messages across continents faster than horses could travel, using nothing but carefully positioned mirrors and mathematical precision. This sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but medieval Islamic scholars had figured out how to create communication networks that spanned thousands of miles using an incredibly sophisticated system of polished metal mirrors positioned on hilltops and towers. The basic concept sounds simple: use mirrors to reflect sunlight from one point to another to send coded messages. But the execution was mind-blowingly complex. They had to calculate the exact angles needed to bounce light across mountain ranges, account for the curvature of the Earth over long distances, and develop a standardized code system that could transmit complex information accurately. The network stretched from Spain to Central Asia, with relay stations positioned at precise intervals that had been mathematically calculated to ensure optimal signal transmission. During daylight hours, they used polished steel mirrors to flash coded messages. At night, they switched to carefully shielded fires that could be seen from miles away. The speed was incredible. A message could travel from Baghdad to Cairo in a matter of hours, covering distances that would take mounted messengers weeks to traverse. They had backup systems, weather protocols, and even encryption methods to prevent enemy forces from intercepting and decoding their communications. The mathematical knowledge required to plan and operate this network included advanced trigonometry, understanding of atmospheric effects on light transmission, and precise geographical surveying techniques. When this system was finally destroyed by various invasions and political upheavals, it would be centuries before anything comparable was rebuilt. Number 1. The earthquake detection system that could pinpoint the exact direction of seismic activity from hundreds of miles away, built using principles we didn't rediscover until the invention of modern seismographs. Picture a bronze vessel about the size of a large barrel, decorated with dragons around the outside, and sitting in the center of what looks like a medieval throne room. This wasn't decoration, this was the world's first earthquake detector, and it was so sensitive and accurate that it makes our early modern seismographs look primitive by comparison. The device worked using a carefully balanced pendulum system suspended inside the bronze container. When seismic waves from distant earthquakes reached the device, even tremors too small for humans to feel, the pendulum would swing in the exact direction of the earthquake's origin. This movement would trigger a mechanical system that would drop a bronze ball from one of 8 dragon heads into the mouth of a corresponding bronze toad below. The moment you heard the ball drop, you knew an earthquake had occurred, and the position of the toad told you exactly which direction it came from. But here's what's really incredible. This thing could detect earthquakes happening hundreds of miles away, days before any human messenger could arrive with news of the disaster. It was basically an early warning system that could give governments time to send aid to affected regions before anyone even knew help was needed. The sensitivity was so finely calibrated that it could distinguish between different types of seismic activity, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, even large landslides all produced different patterns that trained operators could interpret. The metallurgy alone was extraordinary. The bronze had to be cast with perfect uniformity to avoid any vibrations that might cause false readings, and the internal mechanisms required precision engineering that wouldn't be matched in Europe for another 1,000 years. When modern seismologists finally examined the principles behind this device, they discovered that its designers had intuitively understood concepts about wave propagation and mechanical resonance that we didn't formally develop until the 20th century. That's all for now. I'll make similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.